Welcome to the Whistler. What specific mental concerns have you observed in the course of your responsibilities?
Well, thank you for having me. And I have to say that in terms of what I encounter when it comes to mental health differs where I am, right? For instance, when you're in the US or Western countries, what we describe as mental health is slightly different from what we think mental health is here in Nigeria. But it's hard to just generalize and say, oh, this is what I've seen, which is why I went out to go talk to people in the streets, in communities about mental health. And there's a great deal of depression, there's a great deal of anxiety, and then there's a great deal of substance abuse. And more than anything, there's a great deal of trauma. And we know that when people experience trauma, that's emotional pain. People don't know how to deal with it. Oftentimes, people will self-soothe, which is self-medicate, and that's where the alcohol, the drugs, people will want to hush it for a bit, and that's when alcohol, substance use, drugs, gambling, that's all signs that people are not settled emotionally or mentally. And there is a great deal of substance use and gambling addiction in Nigeria, believe it or not.
Interesting. Gambling, if I got you correctly,
Yes.
you're referring to online betting as part of it. Is that correct?
Any form of gambling, whether it's in the street corner, board game, betting money, whether it's high level, like the online bets. You have to think about, why are they so prevalent in Nigeria? Why?
What's the correlation? Yes.
Yes, because when people are economically oppressed, what all they need is a little hope, like something that, oh, if you try this, you might make it big. And once people start doing that, it becomes an addiction. Now, when we think addiction, we only think drugs, we think alcohol, we think nicotine, we think caffeine, we think stimulants. Gambling is one of those addiction that doesn't necessarily affect the user, like drugs. When you're taking drugs and alcohol, it affects your health. Gambling is so, how do I say it? It's so sneaky that a man could render his family homeless, carless, farmless because of gambling. Kids won't go to school because they've taken money that they know should be used for school fees and gambled it away. What will make somebody do that? That's an addiction, and that's a mental health disorder.
Why I specifically mentioned gambling as in betting is because it was copied from where these football games are played in the UK, the US, and you made reference, you learn these observations
Yes.
from there. I'm wondering if this is a serious case, why haven't they stopped this betting in those countries?
Let me tell you one thing. That's because we live in a capitalist world, right? Betting, gambling is a business. Now, in Western countries, they do recognize that it's an addiction. So right before an ad for betting, they would say, if you struggle with addiction, I don't know if they do it in Nigeria, they would say, if you struggle with addiction, please, we recommend that you do not gamble or bet, and that you go speak to a professional. I don't know if, I haven't seen much of the commercials yet, I don't know if they do that disclaimer. And if you, even if it's a printed ad on any newspaper, you would see it, fine print, the disclaimer. If you struggle with addiction, please go talk to a specialist. They are required to do that by the governing bodies because they recognize that that's a problem. Now, there's a difference from someone betting because they have extra money to bet on something. There's that, and there's someone taking all their earned money to go and gamble. Both are bad, but at least someone can spare that little change to gamble versus someone who has nothing, who is solely depending on a positive outcome for this gambling. And they lose all their money, they find money tomorrow, and they're still back gambling. So when we talk about addiction, that is exactly what an addiction is. There's an itch, you have to scratch it, and you will do whatever it takes to satisfy that.
Your description gives a terrifying situation in the country.
It is.
Could you put us through to the numbers that are likely prevalent that you've discovered?
I think last I checked was 54 million
Of
adults
over
in
200
Nigeria.
million Nigerians.
Yes, struggle with addiction of some kind. And the sports betting has a higher percentage in that 54 pie chart. And because we don't see it as a problem, that's the thing. And I'm not saying, oh, we should stop it, but at least there should be an awareness of how pervasive, how dangerous it is. All the countries that we copy it from, they know. They have departments in public health, they have departments in mental health that are focused on addiction. And there's a greater effort to highlight gambling addiction as a big issue because, I mean, people have taken their lives, you know, because they didn't get the outcome that they wanted out of gambling. So that means the cycle is there's a high euphoria about, oh, there's hope. I'm going to gamble, I'm going to make money. And then you gamble and you don't get the results. Now there's depression. You're low, you're down here. And it's like, there's no hope. Nothing better could nothing good could happen. And then people, it's a cycle and it's bad.
Let's situate this scenario with what you do. Have you encountered any particular person that you've treated with this in the country?
Yes, not in the country, because I haven't done one-on-one counseling in the country. I do mostly psychoeducation, which is putting out information about mental health, looking for ways to explain, say, depression, anxiety, trauma in a way that makes sense to us, because I believe that the mental health struggles that people deal with is caused and brought about by the environment, the socioeconomic status, the legal status, the political status in the environment, in this case, in Nigeria. So I don't do one-on-one counseling with clients in Nigeria. What I do mostly is things like this, education, awareness, so that we can recognize things, name them, because it's hard to fight something you can't name, because these things all have names. So that's the bulk of the work that I do here.
You spoke by creating a dichotomy,
Yes.
the economy. The mass is bearing the brunt of the bad economy. In other words, the elite, the policymakers, those in government are somehow safe from this. Are you saying they're actually those who are governing in government now don't have this mental illness?
That's a very wonderful question. Now, when I went out talking to people and I asked them, what is depression? And they said it's just not having money. So I asked them, so do you think that people who have money don't struggle with depression? They said, well, I mean, if you have money, why would you even bother? You know, why would you be sad? So, and I'm going to just break down depression in a way that might help answer that question. So if something bad happens to me, say my grandma dies or my cat, and I'm sad, I have a real reason to be sad. I'm not depressed. I'm just sad. It's circumstantial. I'm going through something. Now, if this has happened and 2 weeks have gone by and I have all the support that I need and people came to commiserate with me, and 3 months later, I'm still not getting out of bed, now I'm depressed, right? And depression just means a sense of hopelessness. That's what it is at the core. And to fully diagnose it, someone has to meet this 5 criteria, right? They have a feeling of hopelessness, a feeling of worthlessness, so they don't feel like they are contributing anything in society. They are mentally fatigued. You can't think clearly. The brain, the mind is foggy. Lack of motivation. And then there's more, but I'm giving you the 5 major ones. Lack of motivation, and then either not sleeping well or sleeping too much. And then there's appetite, either eating too much or not eating enough. Like I said, but these major 5, right? So unless someone is predisposed to depression, say you've had people in the family and it's biological, because depression is biological. So I'm trying to say now, for some people it's biological, for some people it's economical, it's socio-economic. So someone who is depressed and sad and feeling a sense of hopelessness, and then they get money today and they're cheerful, that is an economic depression. There's a reason why after World War II, there was that economic downturn in the US. It was called the Great Depression. It was called that because people had no sense of hope for the future. People couldn't see things getting better, and people were dying and killing themselves. So one of the questions that I asked, just to get a sense of what people would think, is depression an economic problem? Is it a biological problem? Is it a spiritual problem? And I was surprised because I thought a lot of people were going to say it was a spiritual problem. But they said, no, it's an economic problem. Very few people said it was biological. Like I said, some people are predisposed. We can say, why do people get depressed even if they have everything? And it could be, again, another angle that we don't talk about is personality disorders. It could be someone has a personality disorder. And I can tell you that people who struggle with personality disorders are more likely to take their lives than people who struggle with depression. Think about it. When someone is depressed, they lack motivation. They might go to bed thinking, oh, I wish I died tonight when I sleep. I wish I don't wake up. But they don't have the energy or the motivation to say, okay, if I have to take 30 tramadol or paracetamol, I have to go get it. I have to get up. I have to plan. If I have to go jump off a bridge, I have to go find the bridge. I have to find the rope. So someone who's depressed doesn't have the motivation. They might idealize dying. They might wish that they just go to bed and don't wake up so that that problem is not there tomorrow when they wake up. But someone with a personality disorder could be here laughing with us today, and something happens that takes them off and they jump off the bridge in the next 3 hours. Do you see what I'm saying? So,
interesting.
Yeah.
I want us to talk more about the place of governance in this.
Yes.
Elsewhere, you talked about the need to change the mental capacity
Yes.
of the leaders.
Yes.
I'm wondering why you subscribe to that. If, for instance, they are not biologically depressed, economically they are not depressed, religiously they are okay, why would you want to test their mental acuity?
Yes. So psychological fitness is different from mental health disorder.
Okay.
Yes. So when it comes to leadership, we think about, it's important to look at a leader's developmental profile, because someone could be bringing into their role as a leader things that has happened over the years to them, or experiences that they've had over the years. And having like a quick psych evaluation is not to test for mental health disorders. It's to check, okay, what is someone's empathy levels? What is someone's understanding of what it means to be a leader? And that means if you are governing over people, do you know what their needs are? Or are you just coming in with your understanding of what you think the needs are? And even if there are needs, do people care? Do you have the capacity to care? Do you have the capacity to not approach policies and governing based on your personal experiences? Let me give you an example. I am a I'm responsible to issue contracts. Now, I am Yoruba, right? So 10 files land on my desk. Do I have enough self-awareness to not gravitate towards the first file that has a name that looks like mine? That is called implicit bias. It's implicit because we're not thinking about it. I just looked at these 10 files. I zoom into the one file that has a name that sounds like mine. Now that gets in my way of reviewing the other 9 files to see who might be best qualified for this contract that I want to award. Because my subconscious mind already told me who to give it to. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to look for every reason whatsoever why this one person is the best candidate, even if they are not. That is implicit bias. That is a check that I feel like people should go through before really becoming a leader, because you're going to be governing over a wide array of people. And that could also happen if, when I was in college, I dated a guy named Abdul, and he was terrible to me. Now I have this Abdul applying for a position, and I'm looking at him, and I'm the head of HR, and I'm like, Abduls are terrible, right? I'm bringing my past trauma into this decision. So when I talk about checking for psychological fitness, that's what I mean, more than, are they depressed? Do they have anxiety? Because we're all humans, and at some point in life, they say 1 in every 10 adults will go through a depressive episode, because things happen to us, and we have a range of emotions for a reason. So if something happens to me that makes me sad, I should be sad. It makes me excited, I should be excited. So we should experience our emotions. There's nothing there. So when I talk about really evaluating leaders, that's what I mean. And that could be a training, that could be a sensitization, campaign, to make sure that we're always self-aware. And that is a key component of leadership. Self-awareness, cultural awareness, social awareness, that we know ourselves, one, we know the context, and then we know what's going on in the world.
It appears there's a correlation with this mental issue that the leaders are suffering from with the level of governance we have in the country.
Yes.
It appears the leadership style is suffering because of this mental issue.
Yes.
Will you subscribe to specific legislations to ensure that those who go into governance go through these checks?
Yes. I believe it. I also think there should be policies in place to check for quotas. And I know we have it on paper, right? Oh, how much contracts are we giving? How is it spread out across the country? And oftentimes people don't subscribe to it. But I think there should be a good attempt to see leaders go through some types of psychological fitness. And there's a lot of personality tests or, leadership tests that check, how do you handle conflict? How are you in a group? How do you show up when it comes to problem solving? My goal is to try to make these assessments more localized to us, like the example that I gave you. How do we make sure that we're not letting this implicit bias? And when we hear that, we say, oh, that's an European concept, but it's not. It just means that we carry beliefs that are so deeply embedded inside of us that sometimes when we make decisions, we take actions, we don't know in our rational mind that we're making decisions based on a story that our grandmother told us that happened during the war, that somebody from this area did something to them. Now, I've grown up hating everybody from that area based on that. So we should approach at least public leadership devoid of this, or at least be aware of it. That when it's happening, like when I've zoomed into that file and I can ask myself, okay, is this really the best person, or am I just allowing my unconscious mind to guide my decision? So that would allow me to stop and give me a chance to review the other files and say, okay, actually, this person that is with a name that I've never heard before happens to be the best qualified. Imagine if we did that and we had the right people in the right positions in every sector, in education, in health, in rural infrastructure, in safety. Imagine that we did that and we had people who were really qualified and had the right psychological fitness, not just overblown egos in power. But things would be a lot different.
I'm wondering if it ever occurred to you that some of the senators, ministers, governors, their utterances, sometimes when you sit back and you watch them say all these things, what comes to your mind particularly regarding this?
I think, I don't want to be very specific in politics, but I think Nigerian politics is a lot of pandering, right? So we see a candidate, we don't do a lot of checks to see how capable are they really, right, to run a local government, a state, and somehow people achieve power by brute force. So you're not necessarily getting the most qualified, the most capable, the most transformative leaders in position. And all through history, this is something that we've known, we've seen with royal families all over the world. People who are groomed to be leaders get training from a very young age on how to behave, on etiquette, on how to read the room, on their utterances, on relationship building, on how to shake hands. You know what I mean? On eye contact. People get training from a very young age. We don't have such a thing in Nigeria. So imagine that there is a, I don't know, let me just call it a school, a finishing school for leaders to sharpen their minds, to get some of these trainings, to at least be self-aware. And what does self-aware mean for a leader? One, that you know who you are. Two, that you know what your values are. Like, you know what's important to you. Because our values means that, okay, if children being healthy is important to me, and I get into a position to allocate funds for simple clinics for children, it means that that will be really important to me, and I will put money towards that. Now, there's a problem if I come out and say, oh, I want all women and children to be healthy, but then I get in power and have funds to build a clinic, and I don't. And I rather use that money to buy a bulletproof BMW. You know what I mean? So there's a value disalignment there. Again, some of this training will help leaders assess themselves, assess what's important to them, assess, you know, why do you put money in this and not that? Why is that important to you? And I think a lot of our leaders don't know any of these things about themselves.
Will you suggest this equally be inculcated or taught from the grassroots schools, from the basic schools, the primary schools?
Well, how do we do that? I don't know. I feel like that's too broad, right? So that involves the local governments, right? The Department of Education. But I feel like if we really want to be serious, once someone shows interest in leadership, they should be, like I say, this academy or school that people should go through. And I would suggest if people don't do that, we don't take them seriously. But that also means that someone has to create these programs. And it will be the simplest of how you should be as a leader. Like the ABC. And like I mentioned, it doesn't require a PhD. Some of our leaders have first school living certificates. Some have bachelor, some don't even at all, the way the country is going, right? Because whoever grabs power surrounds themselves with whoever is going to yes man them. So that means that the leadership in our country continues to deteriorate. Now you're dealing with people in leadership position who don't have basic self-control, who should quite honestly be in anger management classes. But we have them making decisions for the entire country.
Okay, let's progress from there. How do you think policymakers and organizations could work together to create this awareness of the alarming picture of mental health crisis that you just painted?
I think I'm going to focus on organizations because it's easier to get organizations to make changes than the government. I don't know what would incentivize the government to want to send their top officials to mandatory, psychological fitness classes, because I think it should be, but it's the government. So let's say an organization, a big organization, for instance, Nestle, because they want to make money. If they understand that the psychological fitness of a leader, say a manager that manages about 40 people or a supervisor, that their lack of self-awareness is going to cost them money, they would do something about it. I think organizations are more likely to adapt to changes if you can prove to them that, hey, maybe what your organization needs, maybe what the middle management in this company needs is a training on basic self-awareness. I think organizations will better adapt. In the government, it might take a while, but like I say, I always agree. I always believe in talking about something, creating awareness, because sometimes we don't know what we don't know. We just exist. We don't connect the dots. to a lot of things, because maybe it doesn't affect us personally. Even when it does, we don't know that our leaders' lack of empathy or childhood trauma is really why we have the bad leadership that we do have.
It appears you are creating fresh routes in the course of doing this.
Yes.
Because I haven't really seen anyone doing it across the country in the manner you're doing. What has been the level of reception so far?
So I've been here since June, and the first part of what I'm doing now is we had to host some podcasts, about 12, 14 episodes. And we spoke to lawyers in different sectors, right? In leadership, in finance, in government, private, and just wanted to get a sense of what changes would we like to see in governance. And one of the biggest things is just that people aren't very much aware on how their actions affect, say, an organization, or if it's someone who runs a local government, the entire people under your watch. Because if I'm a local government chairman and I'm supposed to build a clinic and I don't, in this rural area with 2 villages and 2 kids die for something that could have been managed, I'm responsible, but we don't think about it that way. So what I've heard from talking to leaders is that this is very much needed. And we spoke about some partnership, because I'm doing my doctoral research right now with a school called William James in the US. And some are open to partnerships, creating immersion or exchange programs with the students there to come do some work here. So it's been very receptive, I must say.
So let's zero into the specific programs you want put in place.
Yes.
Since there are no schools, lack of government initiative, what are those specific programs you think should be there so that people can learn and adjust and cure this?
So 2 sections. When it comes to leadership development, I think just my concept is called the Awareness School, where we have 3 sections of awareness. So self, cultural, and social or global. And within self, we have 3 sections, and within cultural, 3 sections, and within global, 3 sections. And these programs are designed to activate the conscious mind. Like I said, we mostly do things and make decisions based on our subconscious mind. And we're not even thinking about it, because it drives how we think, how we behave, how we respond to people. So the goal there is to bring up this concept so that people are aware that, okay, maybe sometimes when I'm making a decision, I'm thinking of something, I'm not really doing it because I think it's the right thing. I'm just doing it because something is telling me to. So I feel like the Awareness School is a wonderful landing place to start creating this information and putting it out there and making people aware. Like I said, information is key, because now people know that, hey, okay, maybe this is why this person is like this, and this leader is always kicking somebody. Maybe they were kicked a lot as a kid. You never know. But how do you know that if you don't sit with them and really get into their mind and how their mind works? And that program involves executive coaching, one-on-one. It involves group programming. It involves like a module of training that people can take and take a quiz at the end to gauge their understanding of the concepts. And like I said, we'll do that in self-awareness, cultural awareness, social, global awareness. And on the mental health side, there was a doctor, I think it was from Uganda, that was practicing in the US for a long time. And he had gone back and saw the dilapidated state of mental health in the community. And the idea was to train people who are respected in the society, like your grandmas, like people who are wise, and give them the basic diagnostic because now we're not doing Western diagnosis here, right? Because anyone will tell you that the way I diagnose someone who's sitting in front of me in Boston, Massachusetts is not the same way I'm going to diagnose someone here in Nigeria, because the factors are different. And so I think the government could do something similar and seek out people inside communities and equip them with basic knowledge. If someone comes and they're dealing with this, what could it be? What should we should be thinking it is? And then have them give them a list or places that they could refer people to when it's more than they could understand. I think those are ways that we could deal with both mental health and in leadership development. And I think my field as an organizational psychologist who is also a clinical psychotherapist is that I see how both meet, and I see how both can also have they can be resolved with policy changes and, most importantly, talking about it.
Let's be clear on that. Policy changes, the role of government. Have you had any relationship with any government or anything to be able to pass this information across? And what do you think was the reception?
Right. Like I said, I don't want to focus this on government. Because the government in Nigeria is too big. And I must give some credit and say that from what I've heard, and some people I've talked to, it looks like government is doing, this current government is making attempts to fix the country. But that's one person, right? So you'd have to go to the lawmakers, then you have to go to the reps, then the state governors. You know how it goes. So even if one person at the top is trying to save us money, pay off the debt, people don't know about that. So why aren't they making a better effort to publicize that, right? If Nigeria has been in deficit for I don't know how many years, and now our debt is paid to the tune of 54 trillion or whatever, why isn't that in the news all the time? Is it because that money might be going somewhere else? Because if it's paid and we have excess money, why aren't we building schools? So like I said, there's so much issue of government is so vast that I don't know that as an organization, as one person, that we're able to tackle it, which is why I'm trying to stay away from that. But like I said, I believe this government has good intention, but the implementation, we're still waiting to see the results. And I also agree that if we do get connected to people in the right places, I believe that they would pay attention.
Have you made attempts?
We have, yes, we have, but you know how it is.
The reception, very poor.
Yes. And normally what you hear is that, yeah, it's Nigeria, nothing changes. And that really breaks my heart because we love this country and we want it to be good. And we know what our potential is. People will just say, oh, nothing's going to change.
Can you situate what's happening with the level of insecurity and general crisis in various rural communities because of the economic depression?
Yes, yes. So this is a conversation that I had the other day with a dear friend, and I said just because people have the capacity to move around with aid and mopo and 10 cars doesn't mean they're safe from the insecurity. Now, the people who are in rural areas killing people, what's their grievance, right? Bad governance. They're not getting what they want. People are lying to them, all those things. But then their anger is misplaced. They are killing the wrong people. They're killing villagers who are busy living their lives, And then when it gets to, apprehending these bandits or whatever you want to call them and really making them pay, surprisingly, government is so lax about it. Why is that? Why is that? Is it because the insecurity somehow benefits some people, right? Because people will be more careful to say anything or to agitate because now everyone is focused on their own personal safety. So if I'm an advocate and I want to go out and, take a microphone and just scream to the public, oh, the government is deceiving us, they're stealing our money. I might not be around for 2 more weeks, right? Because we know how that goes. So now what I'm saying is that it's only a matter of time before the public rise up. So if I think that my big fences and my 10 mopole is going to keep me safe, there might be one day that I'm caught without it. And then you have people who have just had it that feel like they have nothing to lose. And the most dangerous person to deal with is an individual who feels like they have nothing to lose.
Okay, let's wrap this up. What recommendation would you suggest as a prescription now
Yes.
for individuals who are going through this alarming mental disorder you just talked about? And what are the programs available for them to access?
Well, first of all, I want to say that if someone is struggling, there's no shame in that, right? Mental health disorder can happen to anybody. People die from it or don't get better because there's a lot of stigma around mental health. So my first recommendation is to put programs in place to destigmatize mental health. It could be a TV jingle, it could be a billboard. As a matter of fact, I've seen 20,000 billboards in Abuja that one of them could be used for something better. Basic information. If you're feeling like this, it's normal. Like when you universalize people's experience, they don't feel so alone in that. That's number one. Awareness, education, validation, right? 2, like I said, we could increase just some areas have them, like in Lagos, and in some areas there's not one mental health center within, like, across states. That's not okay. When people are sick or you cut your finger and you're bleeding, people will say, oh yeah, come, do you have water? Do you have bandage? Because you can see it. You can see the blood. With mental health or emotional pain, you can't see it. So the only way that people can really feel comfortable looking for help is when they can feel comfortable to ask without being shamed or being told that they're crazy or mad.
Available programs people to access?
Yes. There are a few mental health organizations that are doing work, but I feel like if we can get our message to the right people and collaborate with them and help develop these programs, that would be wonderful.
Thank you so very much for being with us. It's been a wonderful experience, sharing all this and listening to this. I think I have to go and check myself as well. And then we'll talk from there.
Thank you very much for having me.